Hi, this is a quick presentation about energy and ATP for the AQA A2 Biology course from Unit 4. From your specification, several things you need to know. First of all, what is energy and why do organisms need it? How does ATP store energy and how is ATP synthesized or made, for want of a better word? And what is the role of ATP in biological processes? So things you need to actually be able to state and describe. So what is energy? A definition that you won't be required to actually repeat or reproduce in your exam, but should actually know. Energy is defined as the ability to do work. Okay, that's why, for example, whenever you are feeling lazy, you don't do any work, you've got no energy. Remember, energy, you can't create it. You cannot create it, you cannot destroy it, it only changes from one form into another. For example, kinetic energy into heat energy. And a big mistake, a really common error, in fact, that students make, is they talk about energy being made or produced by the mitochondria. You need to make sure that you say that energy is released by the mitochondria. And that energy is in the form of ATP. ATP is like our energy currency for all of our cells, because that's the form energy takes. It's a chemical energy stored within the ATP molecule and its bonds. So, why do organisms need energy? What do they actually need it for? Do not say that they needed to move, they needed to think, they needed to keep warm. Try and use language and terms and processes that you've actually learned at A2 or even AS, not GCSE. So good examples on your little energy menu, 6 examples I've used anyway. Active transport from Unit 1. Definitely uses ATP, moves substances against the concentration gradient. Muscle contraction that you'll find out about in Unit 5. Maintaining your body temperature requires some energy. Your metabolism, generally the reactions that occur in your body, that's quite a large bit of a blanket term, but it's still way better than saying movement or breaking things down. Talk about metabolism. It's a broader term, but it's more scientific. It makes you sound a little bit more intelligent. Growth and repair. Actually making something requires a lot of energy. And then producing specific substances, enzymes, hormones, proteins, anything at all. It takes a little bit of energy for your cells to make those substances. So try and use one of these 6 examples and I'll guarantee you will get marks on your exam. So how does ATP store energy? Well, ATP, first of all, a little bit about the molecule itself. It's called adenosine triphosphate. It's called adenosine because it's made of the base adenine and then ribose, a sugar, which are joined together along with 3 inorganic phosphate groups. Okay? The phosphate groups have bonds between them, and these bonds are very easily broken, and they also contain a lot of energy, which is why ATP is so useful as this energy currency in our cells. ATP, you can tell by the equation here, gets broken down with the addition of water. It gets broken down into ADP and PI, or inorganic phosphate. Also, energy is released. You wouldn't normally write that in a word equation simply because it's not a substance. And what you've got to think about, because you could easily be asked this, is what type of a reaction is this? And if you'd have said hydrolysis, you would have been right. Here's a little quick diagram to show you, first of all, the structure of ATP. So ignore what's happening just now, but you've got your adenine base, then you have your ribose sugar and your 3 phosphate molecules with the high energy bonds between them that can be broken through hydrolysis with addition of water. And energy is used for an endergonic reaction. You will not need to use that term endergonic, but pretty much what that means is energy is released so that it can be used for other processes in the cell, processes that absorb energy and create substances. For example, creating proteins of our energy. So the synthesis or the making of ATP. First of all, it's synthesized from 2 molecules, ADP, adenosine diphosphate, and also inorganic phosphate, PI. This uses an enzyme, ATP synthase. Remember, synthesis is another word for making something, so synthase is pretty much making ATP, and that catalyzes that reaction. Then water will be removed in that process. The reason why water is removed is because of the condensation reaction, which joins those molecules together. Finally, ATP is going to move to the parts of the cell that actually need it, the parts that require energy. It's then broken down through a hydrolysis reaction that we see in the previous slide, and that releases energy to be used by that cell for whatever process is necessary. A different enzyme, however, catalyzes this process, and that's ATPase. So it's not synthase, it's not making ATP, it's just breaking it down. So that's why we'll take that word synth out. Dead easy. Little summary, ATP is breaks it down, energy is released. ATP synthase joins the two molecules ADP and inorganic phosphate together, and that uses up energy. Okay, so it is a cyclical process, and that's an example of actually a very simple cycle in biology, which can be very, very important when you think about Unit 5 and the synoptic essay also. Okay, roles of ATP. It's not a good energy source for the long term, simply because it's got very, very unstable bonds which could break very easily, and if you want to store energy, that's not very useful. It's the immediate energy source of a cell, so it's not stored in large quantities. You need to continuously make it, because these unstable bonds, it will break down anyway, but if you're continuously making it and rapidly reforming it, then you've always got a supply that allows your cells to carry on with all the processes that were occurring. A common question to get asked in your exam is why ATP is a better energy source than glucose. This could be a long answer question or a short answer question. Largely, your response should always be the same. First of all, the energy released is much more manageable. That's not a word. The energy released is much more manageable than the energy released when glucose is broken down. And glucose is broken down in quite a long process, but overall that energy is quite a lot compared to the breakdown of just one molecule of ATP. Hydrolysis of ATP to ADP is one step. There's not a whole series of reactions like in a breakdown of glucose. So it releases some energy you can manage. It's one step, so it's very, very quick. Very important. Also, it's rapidly reformed. You keep on making it and making it and making it. So in summary, ATP, it can't be stored. Okay, it's continuously made within the mitochondria of cells that need it during the process of respiration. Finally, cells that require energy for movement or even active transport. Think about specific examples: muscle cells for movement, sperm cells for movement, active transport cells in the small intestine and the epithelial lining. They all require lots of energy because they're very active cells. So ATP will be produced rapidly in those cells and in large amounts. If they're produced in large amounts, what should the cell contain? Lots and lots of mitochondria, simply because that's where ATP is produced or where energy is released. Any questions, please leave a comment, please ask. I'll be happy to get back to you. Hope it's been useful. Thanks.